welcome to Still Speak Podcast. This is an update on the Gabby Petito case. I just did another video on her story, but about something else, and I wanted the updates to have its own video. So you may have noticed that I did not do one yesterday. I did post one yesterday morning, but it was about Friday's update. I didn't do one yesterday because I was out and I kept checking in because I was like, I am not going to miss them catching Brian laundry. So I kept checking my phone and there was nothing. And when I got home, there was nothing. And it seemed like everything was eerily quiet and everything kind of came to this screeching halt. There are still people still theorizing and what have you, but it's definitely slowed down because I remember the weekend prior, last Saturday, when this case was still kind of brand new, and oh my gosh, I was out that Saturday, and when I got home, there was so much to catch up on. It was overwhelming. So there's definitely a difference this weekend. Very quiet. Nothing really to report. The only thing that happened yesterday was that Dog, the bounty hunter, went by the laundry's home and were banging on the door for a brief period of time. And I posted that to my social media. And if you go to my TikTok and see my post about that, you will see that there was very split opinions on him doing that. To his credit, he did not, stop and pose for selfies. He didn't do interviews outside the home. He, he just banged on the door, kind of walked over to the side for a minute, and he quickly left. He got back in his car, and that was that. And he later did an interview outside of a helicopter. I'm not sure if it was his helicopter or the news helicopter. And he just kind of explained why he did it. And then he goes kind of into that he lost one of his daughters when, she was similar age, so that, he could relate with the family. And he talks about his reputation and what have you. I talked about it in the last video I did just a little while ago about Gabby's case. So if you want to hear more about what I got to say about Dog the Bounty Hunter, you can hear it there. And if you don't know who Dog the Bounty Hunter is, look it up. So the biggest thing that happened today was that today was Gabby Petito's memorial service. It was from 12 to 5, and the first hour was live streamed. And I think a lot of people were expecting similar to a funeral feel, where it was like a lot of crying and a lot of people speaking and talking about memories and what have you about Gabby. We did not get to see any of that. It was her father and stepfather. They both spoke together. They stood up at the podium together and spoke, and they kept it very short, sweet, to the point, and overall the service was very uplifting and positive, and it was more of a celebration of her life rather than the negative, bad stuff. There wasn't, people up there bawling their eyes out or anything of that nature, and I think it was really well done, and it really spoke to who Gabby seemed to be. And it was very nice. It was very loving and sweet. Prayer card was handed out at the memorial, and you usually get these at funerals and what have you. And this one's had "Let It Be" on it because Gabby had a tattoo on her arm that said "Let It Be." And on the back it said, "Do not grieve for me, for I am free. I'm traveling the path the Lord has taken me. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish for you the sunshine of tomorrow. Perhaps my time seemed too brief. Do not lengthen it with undue grief. Lift up your hearts and share with me the memories that will always be." So that was really sweet, and they had a ton of pictures of her up there, and beautiful flower arrangements and what have you. And her stepfather, Jim Schmidt, he's the former chief at the Blue Point Fire Department, And so they had all these firemen there, and all suited up in these beautiful, uniforms with white gloves, and it was really touching to see. And Joe Petito, her father, was the first one to speak, and he did a very brief and to the point, speech where he says that, Gabby didn't have 2 parents and 2 step-parents. She had 4 parents, and that her stepfather, who's Jim Schmidt, loved her like it was his own daughter. And they had a very sweet moment where they hugged and embraced one another, and you could tell that they've definitely probably bonded over this tragedy. And so it was really nice to see. It was very lovely. And he went on to basically talk about his daughter, and said that, she had these ridiculously blue eyes, and that her nature was to always smile and be kind to people. And then he went on to say, quote, "I want you to take a look at these pictures, and I want you to be inspired by Gabby. If there's a trip you guys want to take it now. Do it now while you have the time. If there's a relationship that you're in that might not be the best thing for you, leave it now," unquote. And then, Jim Schmidt, he spoke, and he talked about how, as a fireman, he had done many funerals, he attended them, he wrote eulogies for them, but that nothing could have prepared him for this moment, which is so true, right? You can part of so many of those things. A loved one, it definitely probably changed that. And then he just went on to say what's always said in cases like this, or when somebody young dies, and that's that, parents aren't supposed to bury their child. That's not how life's supposed to work. And he said that he worked so hard to support his family, and that Gabby, at only 22 years old, taught him that you can always make money, but you can't make up for lost time. And that she loved life, and she lived her life every single day, and that she was an example for all of us to live by, to enjoy every moment in this beautiful world as she did, to love and to give love to all like she did. And we didn't get to see Gabby's mother speak. You can probably only imagine she is, God only knows, an emotional wreck. So she did not speak. However, she did post to Facebook last night after a hiatus, of time off of Facebook, and she wrote, "As I scroll through all the posts, my heart is so full of love. I wish I can reach out and hug each and every one of you. Your support has been so overwhelming, and we are so filled with gratitude. Please know what you all are doing for us does not go unnoticed, and with all of you by our side, we will get justice for Gabby." And she included a video montage, some pictures we've seen, some pictures we have not, with a beautiful song of Gabby, which was great to see. I love seeing more pictures and getting a more clear image of who she was. In Blue Point, Long Island, they lined the streets with thousands of memorial candles on Friday night. On Saturday night, Northport residents put together a vigil, a candlelight vigil for Gabby. It was gorgeous. They had pictures and flowers and candles, and people spoke, and it was all very touching and sweet. So there's been a huge amount of outpouring of support and love for the family and for Gabby. And her father posted a Twitter saying that they have now started a foundation. They have the website up already. They were talking about, in lieu of flowers for the service, to, donate to this new foundation that they're going to be working on. I was so happy when I saw this, because I think this is a fantastic idea. Obviously, it's in her name, the Gabby Petito Foundation, And he basically said that no one should have to find their child on their own, and we're creating this foundation to give resources and guidance on bringing their children home. We're looking to help people in similar situations as Gabby. So this is amazing, because now Gabby's story will be able to help other people. And let's face it, there's no handbook on what to do if your child goes missing or is murdered, right? And you also want to connect with people who've been through it before. So this is great. This is a great way for them to channel their grief and to make a difference in her name. And I think that's something that she really would be proud of. So I hope that all works out for them, and it all will help as many people as possible. And then the other thing that happened today was that the FBI did go to the laundry home again. They were only there for a few moments. They briefly went inside, and Brian Ensign, who has been basically living outside the Brian's laundry's home, he contacted the attorney for the laundries, and the explanation for the FBI visit was basically that they had requested that some personal items belonging to Brian be given to them to assist with DNA matching, and that Brian's parents did provide the FBI with what they could. This, of course, started a lot of speculation, because people were like, maybe they found like a piece of him and they're trying to match the DNA to the body. There was other talk about maybe DNA in her body, etc. The thing is that Brian's DNA is going to be on her. They were living in this van together, okay? And so what investigators are going to be doing is searching for DNA on her that's not hers or his, if there's another person, so they can rule out somebody else killing her, okay? So I don't think it's that. I actually don't know what the heck this is, and it could be a million different things. Maybe they just needed whatever they collected on Monday they weren't able to get enough DNA of his off of whatever they took, and they just want it in their database to kind of have it there in the event that they find him. It could also mean that they think they might have found a piece of him, especially if it's eaten by an alligator, and they want to match it. Who knows? We don't know. This is so vague, and I mean, it can literally mean anything. I have no freaking idea. And that was basically it. I mean, reporters yesterday, they were just sitting outside the house for hours. There was cameras set up. It was just like this nonstop live stream of this home, and that was it until Dog showed up, and then when he left, it all went back quiet again. And the same thing today, just video of the house, and the only thing that we've really seen is rain. There's a lot of rain happening there. Brian Ensign also said that he spoke with, I guess, the Northport, and they said that they did a lot of air search in Carlton Reserve this weekend because the water levels in the reserve were too high, and they needed to wait until those levels went down. Oh, also a minor thing that happened yesterday was, it was a real minor. There was moving trucks on the Laundries Road, and of course everybody's like, oh my god, they're moving. No, a neighbor moved. And I doubt they're moving because of what's happening, although I'm sure they're glad they're moving with all this going on. But, selling a house doesn't take a week, so I doubt it's because of what's happening. But anyways, that was that. And 48 Hours had a special on the case last night. I'm not a huge fan of any type of documentaries that are done about true crime cases. I always feel they're very biased. They don't show the whole picture. They get basic information wrong. So I didn't bother watching it. I can't really speak to whether or not it was good or not. But by all means, please go watch it. I know that 60 Minutes Australia even did one. So that's wild. That's all the way in Australia too. So that was that. And while I have you here, I wanted to bring up two different things, and then I'm just going to call it a day here until tomorrow. Well, first, I'm just feeling a little weary. I'm concerned that he may be dead, and I don't want him to be. I want him to face the consequences, but I also have this hope that if he is found, he might be broken to the point where he caves and we can actually find out what happened, and her parents can know as well for just the sake of knowing. I know it sounds crazy that a parent would want to know that, but they do, because if not, they'll spend the rest of their lives wondering, and it brings some sort of level of closure and peace to know. And when you don't know, it's utter torment, okay? And I know this because I've talked to families of a murder case, and yeah, the not knowing is just torture. And so I do want him found, and it's not looking good so far. Now that could change overnight, that could change tomorrow. He might be caught. I don't know what to believe as far as, is he alive or is he dead? I have no idea what to think. I really don't. I don't think it's what a lot of people are thinking, like Mexico and Cuba and Canada. I don't think that. And when I was looking at his Instagram, granted, they were all in these different national parks with these cannons and all this other stuff. Every picture of him, he seemed to, and I'm going to put them in this video so you can see what I'm talking about. Most of the pictures are him either hiding behind the elements and structures, or it's him blending in with the environment. And there's even one where he's sitting in a tree that kind of just really freaking creeped me out, thinking of him in this Carlton Reserve that has all these woods and what have you. And I was talking to my husband. My husband has prior experience in a job where he had to go through a survival, course or what have you. And I said to him, do you think he's in this area? Like, is this even possible? And he went through all these, anytime I ask my husband a question, I might want just a simple direct answer, and he'll give me this long drawn out answer, and you gotta love him for it, because I was like, oh, okay, well, I just learned all this stuff that I wasn't asking about, but okay, cool, thanks. And so I asked him, and he was he went into how he could have these tablets to survive without water, and but anyways, he mentioned that if he's the type of person who went and did the Appalachian Trail, which we don't know if that's true, but if it's true, and he lived out there, and he's that type of person who knows how to survive in woods and forests and wilderness, etc., things like that, that especially in a place like the Carlton Reserve that has alligators and snakes and what have you, is that at night he would climb a tree or get to higher ground, so anything that gets him off the ground to rest. And so when I saw the picture of him in the tree, kind of leaning off to the side, like he's half laying down, I was like, oh my god, that gives me the freaking creeps, because he can literally be in those trees, and I'm sure they're looking in the trees, but it just stood out to me. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to believe about this. I really and truly don't. And I said it in the other video. In my brain, I think okay, well, murder suicide happens a lot, right? And if he had killed her, and it was in a fit of rage, or it was accidental, or whatever the case may be, right? He could have killed himself right then and there, right? Because, we know they were cooking in the van, which means that they most likely had a knife. He could have just slit his frickin' wrist. We don't know if he had a gun on him or a weapon. My mom seems to think that he wouldn't be traveling all those states with a gun. I tend to disagree, because I know that, every state has different laws, but if you're traveling like that, especially alone with your girlfriend, I would think that you would have a gun with you for protection. The problem becomes is that if you shoot that gun and that state doesn't allow it, that's a different story. But I don't think that these states like search your car when you enter them to like look for a gun. So it's not a reach that he might have had a gun on him on this trip. I don't know. But he also could have. I mean, he really wanted to kill himself. There's probably a dozen or so things in that van that he could have used to go hang himself from the many trees that are out there. Use excuse me, I hit my mic. The hammock, the hammock that we all see in the pictures and stuff, he could have used that to do it. He could have used a towel. He could have used, you know what? I don't even like talking about the different ways to kill yourself. That makes me uncomfortable. So I'm going to stop on it right there. My point being is I think that if he would have done it, he would have done it at that point. And if he didn't do it at that point, I would think that somewhere along the 35 to 36 hour drive home he would have. And if he didn't at that point, then I think, why not just kill yourself in the home? That's my thought process. Like, why wouldn't he have just done it in the home? Why would you need to go somewhere to do it unless you want to do it via jumping off a bridge? Why go to the Carlton Reserve or wherever and do it out there? Now, that's not to say that he didn't die from being out there for too long for whatever reason, got attacked by an alligator. Who knows? So, I don't know. At the same time, I'm like, I don't know if he's out there. I really don't know. I don't know. I see them searching for him, and I'm thinking, like, can he see, sense, feel, or hear them in some way? I don't know. I've never been to the Carlton Reserve to know. But I just feel like all this activity would be something he would sense, and he would then move on to someplace else. But I don't know that for sure. And I hope we find out soon, because I hope they find him, and I hope they find him alive. But the mystery here is it's widening, because it's like, all right, where is he? How is this dude, this 23-year-old kid, evading FBI and law enforcement like that? So he's like one of the most hated person in America right now, and other places, and we still don't have him. Like, how is this possible? So I feel like he's not out just walking around. Like, everybody keeps thinking they see him here and there and everywhere. That every poor bald guy out there is being accused of being, Brian Laundrie. I don't think so. I think that he's very well aware that he's very hated, and I think that he's very well hidden, and he's not just out walking around all willy-nilly. But I could be wrong there. I honestly don't know. I really don't know. It's actually kind of blowing my mind a little bit here, because this guy is like, wow, you drove 35 to 36 hours, right, in your girlfriend's van. And that's interesting too, because what if he would have gotten pulled over? And maybe he did, and he's driving her van, but she's not with him. How would that have unfolded with the police? Right? And insurance, because only certain people are allowed to drive your van. Then again, he was driving it all this time, so maybe he was on the insurance. Maybe it was his insurance. I don't know. So anyway, you have this guy, he drives 35, 36 hours, and then he comes back home, and he's just like, chilling, apparently, who knows, camping, riding bikes with his mom, according to neighbors. And then 2.5, 3 days later, after she's reported missing, he just takes off with all these people on the case already, and media outside, and he got away with it because nobody even noticed it, and nobody had a clue, because until his parents called the police that Friday night to say, hey, Brian went missing, and he went missing on Tuesday, nobody had any clue, and everybody assumed he was in the home. They were literally outside the home chanting, come out, Brian, don't be a coward, right before we found out that he wasn't even in there. So how did that happen? It's just so I feel like if he's been able to pull all that off, maybe he really is able to pull off evading police and is alive somewhere. I don't know. I have no idea. What I do know is that every day they don't find him, one minute I'll think that, maybe he's alive, and then when a search ends for the day, I think like, you know what, he's probably dead. He's probably dead. And that's going to really suck. It's not going to be good. And so, anyway, there was two other things that I saw today that I wanted to address, and one of them was somebody was talking about how he has a great defense, and that his lawyers would use this if this does go to a trial and he's not dead. And this person had a point, right? Because you have this incident on the 12th that's documented where that he was the victim and she was the aggressor. So you can use that to basically paint this picture that it was self-defense. Of course, unless evidence says no, defense lawyer, you can't use that because this was most certainly not, self-defense, because this is what the evidence shows. But yeah, he absolutely could use that. But what's fascinating to me is that he did have that incident where he was proclaimed to be the victim and that she was the aggressor. And you would think that he would have used that to his advantage. Like, he does hurt her, let's say, and we know she ended up being hurt. I'm just saying, anyways, I'm trying to be cautious not to accuse. I don't want any lawsuits. I don't know how far the laundries will take things. But why, like, if you hurt her, immediately after, you call 911 and you say, oh my God, me and my girlfriend, we got into this huge fight, and I was trying to get her off of me or away from me, and I pushed her and she fell and she hit her head, or whatever the case may be. And, either on the phone with them or when they get there, you tell them, like, we had an incident 2 weeks ago in Utah. You can pull up the record. You'll see that she was the aggressor. So he could have used that to his advantage. And so that's interesting to me, because then it makes me concerned. It makes me concerned that there's way more to the story and than even what we're expecting, and that her killing or her murder, if it ends up being murder, because right now it's homicide, may be a lot worse and could not be explained away as self-defense, if you know what I'm saying. And so that's a little concerning to me. I was leaning towards she was probably strangled, because that's the most common and intimate thing and when it happens between a couple, it's very personable, right? Because you're in their face, like right there. But it may not. It actually might be something even worse than that, because why not? Why not use that off the bat to defend yourself and say, oh my gosh, she attacked me again, and this time she just wouldn't get off of me, and all I did was push her and she fell back and she hit her head. Or he had a whole story. He had police to back up that story. He had a whole body cam to back up that story. It was all documented. He went to a hotel for the night, for Pete's sake. So that's fascinating, and I feel like, is there way more to this that can explain why he wouldn't have taken that opportunity? I don't know. The other thought that I had was, it's mind-boggling that he would go back home, but at the same time, not totally mind-boggling to me. So you go back home, right, and you just hope that it takes time for people to report her missing. And in this case, it did take quite some time, right? 11 days. And, and that's not the parents' fault. They assumed all the things that we all would have assumed. Bad service, broken phone, whatever. And we just would have just kept blowing it off and not consider that there's something worse going on here. And he was right, because it took them a while. And, he may or may not have sent that Yosemite text, which in his mind he might have thought it was buying him time. And now we have these neighbors, and these neighbors are claiming that he was mowing the lawn, and he went for a bike ride with his mother, and that they went camping for 3 days. Now, I believe all this. And the reason why I believe all that, and I said it in another video, is because, him and Gabby had been gone for 2 months prior to when he returned back. And I don't think that the neighbors would be mistaking what happened in April, May, June with what just recently happening, meaning I don't think they went camping in like April and these neighbors are confused and thought it was last week, right? There's a gap of time that separates. And so I don't think that they're confused or they got it wrong or they had their days mixed up. I think they're absolutely right that he was riding bikes with his mother and he was mowing the lawn. And here's one of the reasons I think that might be. Maybe his entire reasoning for going home was to see his family because he knew that one or two things were going to happen. He was A, either going to jail, or B, he was going to take off, or C, he had intentions of eventually killing himself. And he wanted to go home and see his family first. And possibly to spend time with them. And that can explain going for a bike ride with his mom, spending time with her, mowing the lawn for his dad, doing something for his dad, going on a 3-day camping trip with them and spending those 3 days with them, spending the 10 to 11 days that he had with them prior to her being reported missing and everything went to hell. And then he had, another day or 2 or 3 before he took off. Maybe he did that to see his parents, one last time. I don't think that's totally far-fetched because he had 35 to 36 hours to think about what to do on his drive, and he could have just driven off to go someplace else, and then they both would have been reported missing, and nobody would have known what the hell was going on. And he didn't do that. He went home. So I have to wonder, was that to actually go have his last moments with them? I don't know. And another thing that was brought up was, I talked the other day not briefly, actually it wasn't brief at all. I'm never really brief. I'm usually very long-winded. I apologize for that, but sometimes I just have to be in order to get my point across. So the other day I had that video where I talked about why it is that when I break it down for you, I don't believe these hitchhikers' stories. And I see somebody today saying that the whole reason why people actually believe these hitchhiking stories is because they believe that he was trying to create an alibi. And I thought about that for a second, and I was like, but wait a minute. No, that makes no sense, because why would you go through the trouble of hiking 26 miles, then hitchhike, and then walk another 5-6 miles, and then hitchhike again, only to go back to where the body was and now get the van? It would make more sense if he walked 26 miles on foot, hitchhiked, right? Then when he got back there, he called the police and was like, oh my God, I went for a walk. I swear to God, these women just picked me up, and when I came back, she's dead. He didn't do that, though. He didn't do that. So this is fascinating as well, because it's similar to the other thing I said. Like, he could have used that incident in Utah as in his explanation or his defense when calling the police, but he didn't do that. And if he was going to create this alibi by hitchhiking and walking 26 miles and 6 miles and all, going through all this work and wasting all this time only to come back and take the van and then leave, instead of actually calling the cops and using that alibi that you just created, that makes no sense. You can say, oh, he had a change of heart. I think his change of heart would have been the opposite direction, and it would actually be that he would definitely call the police because he just went through all this trouble to create this whole alibi. But he didn't do that. I don't know. This Brian dude, he's an interesting person, right? It's really interesting because it's definitely boggling, especially for me, how he just decided to go back home I just kind of wonder, like, what was he thinking was going to happen? Did he have a plan? Did he know what was going to happen? Did he know that the second that the police made contact with him that he was going to flee? I mean, he had to have been thinking of a plan. He had to be planning something. He didn't just wake up and say, okay, today I'm going to take off. No. That didn't happen. There was definitely some planning there. Now, you can argue that maybe his parents were helping him plan. You can argue that he was just planning it himself and they didn't have a clue. But there was definitely some planning there. He knew that he was probably cornered. And what's odd is that he already had the protection of a lawyer, so there was really no reason for him to flee because they couldn't force him to speak. He was protected by the Fifth Amendment and his lawyer. So the only reason for fleeing would be if you know that it's inevitable that you're going to be screwed, which leads me back again to her death. And was it so awful that he knew there would be no defending that, and there'd be no explanation for that, and then it would be straight up, murder and not like a self-defense type thing? I don't know. And this is why we need him found, because I think if he's out there, right, and he is in like the woods or this reserve, the swamp, wherever, and he's been out there for, almost 2 weeks now and probably doesn't have tons of food on him and doesn't have gallons of drinking water, that he might be desperate enough, if found, that he wants that home-cooked meal or food in general, and he wants warmth and a blanket and clean clothes and a shower, and at that point he just might completely cave and just release all of it, because at that point, what else has he got to lose? And people typically confess when there's, one, a lot of pressure from the people around them or the public in stories like this, and two, when they feel like they have nothing else to lose. They've already lost everything, right? So, like, for example, in the Barry Morphew case, he has not confessed. In his mind, it's likely that because it's his daughters, he still has them to lose. He still has his parents to lose. He had a business, and so he had that to lose. And in other cases, people lose everything, whether it's because they killed their entire family in a fit of rage or whatever the case may be, or they killed one person and now everybody hates them, and so they feel a sense of like, I just lost everything. I lost this person and that person, and my job fired me over this, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is there left to fight for? What do I have left? There's no getting out of this, and then they cave. And some stories, it's both. It's both the pressure from the public and law enforcement and the feeling of, I have nothing left to lose. And once you have nothing left to lose, or you feel like you have nothing left to lose, then you just kind of fold. So that may happen. I know it sounds like no way that's going to happen. But it might. It actually might. They actually might find him, and he might just release it all. And we're just going to have to stay tuned and see what happens and stay up to date. So for tonight, that's it. I'm rambling on now. Nobody wants to listen to me rambling. And we will definitely discuss this tomorrow. Tomorrow is Monday. It's a work day. I'm sure other reporters are going to be back at work tomorrow outside the home. We'll see if something happens, if there's any movement or activity. And let's just hope that they find something tomorrow that's helpful, or they can share more information with us about why or what they have that's making them stay in the Carlton Reserve, or that he's found entirely. So until next time, I'll see you soon. And this is another psych. I ended the video and I had two of the points I forgot to say earlier because I started rambling. And sometimes I do that. You'll get to know me better. But I thought about it, about as far as killing himself. Typically they want to be found if they do that, right? They want you to find their body. or somebody to. And the fact that he didn't take his wallet, according to the lawyer of the family, and his phone, tells me his original goal wasn't to go kill himself. The original goal was to get lost. Okay? He may have, in the process, died, but that phone would help find him. And so would any type of credit card or what have you. And he left that all at home. Like, he didn't want to be found. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. And the other thing was, I can't remember the name of the person, because I listen to a lot of true crime stories, and I stumbled on some video one day, and the story was of a man who had killed his girlfriend, fiance, whatever, and he went back to his home country. He wasn't from America, and he basically fled. And you have to forgive me, I don't even know what country he went to. I don't even remember. It was a while ago that I heard this story. If anybody knows what story I'm talking about, please email me at stillspeakpod@gmail.com, because I'd love to pull that story up. And it was very different, so I don't even know why I don't remember it, because it was that different that I think that I would have remembered it, and I can't remember it. But anyways, he went back to his country, and, obviously, if you leave the country, they can't really do much about it. But what they actually did was, our law enforcement here went to that country and convinced that country to charge him for her murder, even though it didn't happen in their country, and they did. And he was found guilty in that country. Now, the biggest thing with that, though, was that he didn't get as many years as he would have if it was in America. But they did do that. So that is something to think about. I don't know how that works. I don't know if it's only certain countries or certain cases or certain circumstances. I don't know. But I do remember hearing this story and thinking, what the hell? Because it was the first time I ever heard of something like that happening. So, excuse me, hiccups. I don't think he's out of the country, honestly. I really don't. Because at the time that he left, his face was pretty out there already. And it was in the heat of everything. Oh my goodness, that's my cue. I got the hiccups. So, just want to throw that out there because I forgot to mention that in my last video. Okay, that's it. I gotta go get rid of my hiccups. Have a good night.